So far, you saw some of my favorite console games, so I wanted to shake things up a bit and show you some of my favorite Microsoft DOS games. These games are timeless in my mind and will not be in yours, and that's fine. We have a right to disagree, so without further ado, I'm Professor Retro, and these are our top 10 of my favorite DOS games. Commander Keen launched in 1990 and created by ID Software. These games are simple and it makes the game fun to play. You can run, jump, or instead of jumping, you can use the infinite pogo stick to get around. The world of Commander Keen is weird in the best way. You've got jelly bean-shaped aliens called Orcs, Cyclops monsters that scream when they charge, and of course, legendary Dopefish, which is the dumbest, most famous fish in gaming history. The controls are crisp, the level design is clever, and it rewards exploration. And the focal stick is still fun to bounce around with. Come on, those sound effects, pure nostalgia, and if you're a Green Bay Packer fan, you love the green and gold helmet. Released in 1991 by DMA Design, yes, the same folks who brought you Grand Theft Auto, Lemmings was an instant classic. It blended puzzle solving with time management strategy and surprising amount of empathy. It's one of those rare games that looks simple enough until you actually try to play it. At its core, Lemmings is a real-time puzzle game. You're given a group of mindless little creatures who march forward no matter what, and your job is to assign them roles to get as many to safety as possible. However, you don't actually control them, you influence them. Instead of level, the basic plot is simple. Help them get from one end of the screen to the other without killing them. One of my favorite things to do is if you feel like you screwed up, you can hit the self-destruct button and watch them all blow up one by one. Snood is a puzzle game created by David Dobson in 1996. If you are ever near a college computer lab, or an office PC, or your uncle's gateway desktop in the early 2000s, you probably saw it, right next to Minesweeper. It looks like a budget version of Puzzle Bobble, but there's more to it than meets the eye. Instead of matching bubbles, you launch little weirdos with faces. Each Snood has a distinct personality. Some look goofy, others look mildly cursed. And one definitely looks like he knows what you did last summer. The brilliance of Snood lies in its simplicity. You aim, you fire, and you match 3 more of the same Snood. But here's the twist. The Snoods don't fall unless they all disconnect from the top. That adds a layer of strategy that most bubble shooters don't have. You're not just trying to match colors, you're trying to cause catastrophic chain reactions. It's like lining up dominoes with a single shot. Snood became a cult hit, especially in the age of dial-up internet and shareware. It spread through email chains, floppy disks, and early download sites like a virus of joy. It was easy to play, hard to master, and nearly impossible to stop. First released in 1971 and evolving through the decades, the Oregon Trail was doing something incredibly bold, blending education and gameplay in a way that didn't make kids roll their eyes. It was part survival sim, part history lesson, and all chaos. It didn't preach. It let you live through hardships of American frontier and die a lot, usually from dysentery. Now, the way I played Oregon Trail was back in grade school when most edutainment games were incredibly boring. Well, in my opinion, they were. Oregon Trail made edutainment fun. Not only do you learn about what the settlers had to deal with at the time, you also learn geography. Teachers loved to assign it, and kids gladly took up the challenge. SimCity 2000 hit the scene back in 1993, when Windows 3.1 was a thing, and games came on more floppy disks than you could count. Developed by Maxis, this was a follow-up to the original SimCity, and it wasn't just a sequel, it was a full-blown city-building revolution. It took the basic idea of running a city and cranked it up a notch. Not only could you build roads and zones, but now you had the option to make underground layers, terrain editing, water pipes, subways, and archaeologies. That looked like sci-fi space colonies. Oh, and you could also unleash disasters, because let's be honest, we're all just one click away from summoning a firestorm. But not only is that, you could also have to balance the budget, manage public opinion, tweaking tax rates by individual zone types, and strategizing long-term development. Despite its age, SimCity 2000 holds up. Why? Because the core loop is just that good. You start with nothing but land and a dream, and suddenly you're juggling power grids, zoning laws, traffic problems, trying to squeeze a stadium between a hospital and a toxic waste dump. SimCity laid the groundwork for every city building game that came after it, from SimCity 4 to Cities Skyline. You trace the DNA right back to the classic. One other thing I liked about this game was if you didn't want to build, you could have scenarios where there are pre-built cities. And if you didn't want to try to work on the city, you'd load up one of the scenarios and then unleash holy hell by every disaster in the game at once. I had fun doing that. Released in 1995 by Westwood Studios, Command & Conquer took everything that made Dune great and said, what if we made it cooler, faster, and slapped some live-action cutscenes on it? Spoiler alert, it actually worked. Now, in this game, you build bases, collect Tiberium, you crank out units, and you steamroll your enemies. But unlike other real-time strategy games, at the time, Command & Conquer kept things snappy. So instead of waiting forever for buildings to be built, you just waited 5 minutes for one unit to be built. No complicated tech trees. Command & Conquer is your old-school RTS warfare with explosions, lasers, and the occasional airstrike. And let's not forget multiplayer. Because back in the day, Command & Conquer was a LAN party gold. Command & Conquer didn't just stop with one great game, it kicked off a legendary franchise. From Red Alert's alternate history madness to Tiberian Sun's dark sci-fi vibes to the glorious Command & Conquer Remastered, this series kept delivering the real-time strategy goods. No, I'm not a real-time strategy type of guy, but I love Command & Conquer because it made real-time strategy fun. Yeah, you had games like Warcraft, which actually will be our next entry into this list, and other real-time strategy games, but to me, Command & Conquer was always my favorite, especially Command & Conquer Red Alert. Now, before World of Warcraft was a thing, and before StarCraft kept telling you to construct additional pylons and hit the esports scene, there was Warcraft, Orcs and Humans, which was released in 1994. This was the game that started it all. Warcraft was not only fun, but it was a world. Not just levels and missions, but a full-blown universe. You have orcs, humans, spellcasters, necromancers, each with unique abilities and lore. Blizzard didn't just make a strategy game, they made the first chapter of an epic saga that would eventually spawn novels, expansions, and one of the most popular MMOs of all time, and a movie. Sure, real-time strategy existed before Warcraft. However, this was one of the first games to redefine and polish a formula, and one of the real-time strategy games that I actually liked playing. You could control multiple units with ease, the interface was intuitive, and let's not forget the fog of war. That devious layer of tension that kept you guessing what the enemy was up to. Now, if you remember back in the old dial-up days, which was kind of painful, but once you connected, Warcraft was pure competitive magic, and strategy, deception, and a bit of trash talking in the chat. The ingredients were perfect game night. Now here's a list of some of the things that Warcraft brought to the scene. Well, without it, you wouldn't have Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3, which introduced heroes and changed real-time strategy forever. You wouldn't have World of Warcraft, the biggest MMO of all time. And definitely wouldn't have Hearthstone, which is a card game based off of the characters in Warcraft, which distilled Warcraft in its roots of a massive entertainment tree. Now, I liked Warcraft because it was a fun real-time strategy game, and it reminded me a lot of Command & Conquer. And the fact that you got orcs that grunted at you if you played that. I mean, you could play it just like Command & Conquer. You could play the one side or the other. And in Warcraft, you could play orc or human, and you could build things and attack your enemies. It was quite fun to play. Released in January 29th of 1996, after a slew of successful platformers, one of my favorite first-person shooter games of all time, Duke Nukem 3D, was released. And this was such a great game. You had best gameplay I've ever played for a first-person shooter back in the day, and some of the greatest one-liners he ever said, such as, "I'm here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of bubblegum." Now, unlike other first-person shooter games such as Wolfenstein 3D and Doom, Duke Nukem 3D took it up a notch by making sure you could have interactive moments in the game where you could use sinks, toilets, and even mirrors. The level design also is what made this game great. Unlike just some fantasy lands or space where you're on a planet, most of it here looked like you're in a city with strip clubs, movie theaters, and so on. Plus, it had some unique weapons as well. Yes, Doom had the BFG 9000, but Duke had a lot of different weapons in here, like a shrink ray, a freeze ray, and other weapons that made this game so great. The multiplayer part of this game also made it great as well, but this also had the option to make your own levels. Now, yes, Doom had WAD files where you could make your own levels for Doom. However, those you had to actually have some real programming with. But with Duke Nukem 3D, it had a level editor built into it. Duke Nukem 3D actually holds up well today, and has a plethora of sequels and add-ons that you could buy to make the game more epic. If you still wanted to play Duke Nukem 3D on your modern PC or laptop, well, I have some awesome news. You could go on Steam and get the 20th anniversary edition for cheap. Well, I'm not sure if it's cheap now, but when I bought it, it was like $10. However, 3D Realms no longer has control of the game. They gave it over to Gearbox, and I'm kind of iffy on that. But one of the things Gearbox did, which made the game great, is by a push of a button, you could choose from the modern graphics that Gearbox have used, or you could use the old school graphics where the game had. Now, if you ask me what game started the first-person shooter genre, one might think I would say Doom. Well, you're wrong, because I would say the granddaddy of modern shooters was actually Wolfenstein 3D. Wolfenstein gave us the best and most simplest plot I've ever seen in a game. All you do was shoot and kill Nazis, find keys and escape. But it wasn't actually that easy. You still had to contend with the Nazis, of course, and attack dogs who are all out to get you. Now, one of the things that also made this game awesome was you could play it on low-end PCs at the time, because most high-end PCs back when this game came out were extremely expensive. But if you had a low-end PC and you found even the shareware version, which had maybe I think one level, you could still play this game, and it was pretty awesome. Now again, if you ask me, Wolfenstein 3D actually paved the way for games like Doom and Duke Nukem 3D, and other modern-day shooters that have come out as well. Now again, I'm not a real-time strategy type of guy, and I'm definitely not an actual turn-based challenge type of guy, but there's one game that I absolutely love that had both, and that was Heroes of Might and Magic. Now, in Heroes of Might and Magic, weren't just moving armies around. You're managing your heroes, building up towns, collecting your resources, and casting powerful spells. It's like playing a game of chess, but with dragons, wizards, and giant war machines. Another cool thing about Heroes of Might and Magic was that there were a bunch of factions you could join. Each of them had their own strengths and units. Plus, there were randomized maps, so you weren't playing the same map over and over and over again. And, along with that, randomized campaigns, so you weren't playing the same campaign over and over again. Which made this gameplay actually fresh. You could play this 1,000 times and still find something new. Now, like I said, I'm not really a turn-based type of guy, but one of the reasons I do like it is you can position your troops using the terrain to your advantage, timing your spells perfectly, and it's a brain workout every time you play the game. Now, our number one spot, I had every one of these games you can imagine, and that was Doom, which was released in 1993. This wasn't a game, it was an experience. Now, sure, Wolfenstein 3D did lay the groundwork, but Doom took the first-person shooter genre and turned it into a violent, blood-pumping thrill ride. Now, enemies did swarm you when weapons exploded with power, like the BFG 9000, and I'm not going to tell you what BFG stands for, because this video might then get taken down. But you can pretty much guess what BFG stands for. Now, Doom, for its time, was absolutely incredible. The 2.5D engine gave us sprawling mazes, flickering lights, and textured environments that felt like this was actually a real flight, even though these places were filled with imps and boiling lava. Now, not only did you have to contend with the imps and all the other things that attacked you in Doom, you also had to worry about hitting certain items like exploding barrels, and trust me, there are times I've hit a barrel and exploded and said game over because I died. Word of warning, if you have the rocket launcher, don't shoot a barrel with it either. You'll definitely die, especially if you're too close. But the use of barrels to your strategy. If you've got an enemy near exploding barrels, shoot the barrel instead of the enemy, and you'll actually kill the enemy in the process. And who could actually forget the soundtrack to this game? This was absolutely iconic, which was next to the crunchy sound gun blast and those low growls from the demons hiding just around the corner waiting to get at you. This was pure headbanging magic made in MIDI form, and it turns every level into a concert of pure absolute carnage. Now, like I said back in Duke Nukem 3D, Doom also had its way to alter levels, and that was with Doom Log, which made this game even more fun because you could have Doom as a platform, Doom as a horror game, or you could just turn all the enemies into boring if you want. I played Simpsons Doom, where all the enemies were Simpsons characters. There's so many of these that came out at the time, they're just too many to list. Doom's DNA and influence keep going on because this game still holds up even 30 years later after it came out. I mean, you have the recently released Doom, The Dark Ages. There was another Doom that came out before that. Plus, like I said at the start of this entry, I had every Doom game possible back in the day, from Doom to Doom 2 to Doom 3 to the absolute final Doom. And I think there was one more I had that had all the Doom episodes in the package and everything else. It was just pure greatness. And there you have it, folks. Some of my favorite DOS games of all time. Tell me what were your favorites in the comments. Should I play them? Should I not? What's your opinion on these? Anyway, I'm Professor Retro, reminding you to keep your controllers plugged in, your consoles turned on, and, well, this time your PC's booted up. And keep gaming, peace out, and stay frosty.